Okay, we're on air. The reason why I do it this way is because I feel like when I ask questions, like when I'm thinking about it from like a podcast point of view, it's not like really a personal thing, and it's more I'm just asking questions on what I think people want to hear. Where when I ask questions like this, it's just more like a relaxed thing. We're just having a conversation, then I go and edit it later. So if you don't want to answer any questions, whatever, I'll just cut it out afterwards.
Oh.
So I guess my first question, Robert, would be. How did you start doing the podcast, and like kind of what made you interested in doing it?
A good friend of mine who actually is the sponsor of the show has a studio, a full live studio that we broadcast out of, and he says, "Hey, you want to do a podcast?" And I'm like, "Sure, why not?" It started out with us just being like, it was going to be, we're going to do 5-10 episodes just to try it out and see what it was like. And then, end it. But then, we got 5 shows in. Our first 5 shows were absolutely horrible.
Really?
Yeah, they were terrible. And in fact, I'm getting ready to delete them because of iHeart. But then once we got into about the 10th episode, I came up with I got tired of doing an hour-long podcast. Just me and Caleb, so we decided to start having guests on, and it just took off from there. We just the audience kept growing each month. The audience is still growing, and then we got this opportunity with iHeart, which came along, which was pretty awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, I guess the next question would be like, what would be some of the struggles that you've like experienced through making the podcast? Like maybe what would you do differently in the future, or if you could change something in the past, like in terms of maybe the production or who you're interviewing or what the kind of questions you ask. I mean, I'm sure you've discovered tons of things on the way, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we first started out. It was a real struggle for me to, I've always been behind the mic. Like I've put shows together for other clients and stuff and structured them, but they were for the radio. Mm-hmm. They weren't for podcasting. So I had a good idea of how to do it, but I didn't know, I'm not a person that talks in the microphone normally. Yeah. So that was a struggle for me. The same was for Caleb, and it got to where every show we'd listen to ourselves after the show, and then we'd point out our downfalls, so to speak. Like, Caleb had a habit of going, and I would be like, I'd lose my train of thought just being nervous or whatever. Mm-hmm. So we just keep critiquing ourselves, and as every show we got better and trying to, watch those habits we had, those bad habits. Mm-hmm. Struggle-wise, it was just, it wasn't too many struggles, just having the time to promote and finding guests and all that. It takes up a lot of time.
Yeah. Are you monetizing at all, or are you waiting, or what? I mean, do you have any plans in the future?
Yeah, we starting next week we're on iHeartRadio, mm-hmm. And we're picking up 4 new sponsors that are sponsoring the show, and they'll be, I can't say any names right now, but just because of but once it airs you'll know. But they're pretty big companies, and we're hoping to grow that. Mm-hmm. Into a revenue stream.
I'm actually not really. I've heard of iHeartRadio, but I'm like not completely familiar with it. Is it like a podcast station, or what is it?
It's coming out in most cars now. Mm-hmm. So you can listen to it in your car. It's a mobile app. It's on certain stations in certain cities. I don't think it's all over the United States. I think it's mostly central to East Coast. I think actually California, I think, is the only state that doesn't have it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's pretty big.
Is there a lot of other SEO podcasts, or are you one of the first ones?
There's one other, but it's more digital marketing, paid advertising stuff. Mm-hmm. We're the only one that covers everything, mm-hmm. as a whole.
Do you expect to get like a lot of listeners from it?
Yeah, they're telling me that anywhere from 8 to 15,000 people
Wow.
an episode, but that's kind of a wait and see what happens.
Yeah.
But right now we have close to 2 to 3,000 listeners, depending on who the guest is
Hmm.
on the show.
Did you like apply to get into that, or did somebody just like discover your podcast? How did that work?
I knew some people, and they kind of shared my podcast with them
Hmm.
at iHeart, and then we submitted our podcast to them, and they came back and said, "Hey, you want to be on iHeart?" I'm like, "Heck yeah!" They have
Nice.
80 million users, so
Wow.
yeah, if I can get .02 of that, I'll be happy.
Yeah. Did you? Let's see. There was a question I was going to ask. Did you? Did you immediately from the beginning, like you probably knew about iHeartRadio for a while, did you immediately, like when you first started the podcast, like think like, oh, we're going to wait till 10 episodes, or oh, we're going to wait till we interview Rand, any of that sort of thing before you were going to submit it or ask?
That wasn't ever even on the radar, honestly. None of it was. We were just going to put it on Sprecher, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And because we started out just as a fun thing to do. It there wasn't a strategy behind it. It was like, hey, let's have some fun. We can goof off and do the podcast, and it just kind of blossomed from there.
So I don't know what I would ask next. I mean, I guess for my own personal podcast, I mean, my podcast is pretty like not really structured, and I guess I would want to know, like, from your point of view, how important it is to like really structure a podcast, or is it just something where you think like it should be like a natural conversation, that sort of thing?
I would say we try to keep it natural. I mean, if you're talking for the conversation, absolutely. We don't write any scripts down. We don't take any notes for each show. It's strictly off the cuff, and we just, because it's live, and we kind of should maybe. Sometimes we'll make notes, but other than that, we don't structure it all. But try to have people of influence on the show. That's our major strategy.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I wanted to ask. When you do your titles for your podcasts, I usually do like interview with this person, and then I don't usually know how long to make the titles. Do you do it that way? You of course you want to include their name, right? So like what else do you put in there for SEO purposes in terms of like the podcast store or social media, that kind of thing?
I'll put their name and the topic they're covering.
Okay.
And I'll also mention if it's a company they're with, or like for instance Rand Fishkin with Moz, or that type of stuff.
So what kind of advice would you offer somebody like me who, has a podcast that's similar to yours but isn't as established, but, still looking to go in that direction?
I would recommend sticking to a schedule.
Okay.
Like every week, have a certain time, because what happens is it's almost like YouTube. If you do it on YouTube, you want to post a certain day, put it out at a certain time, because then your people start following you. They know every week what time you're going to be there, what day, and they start their routine.
Right. Okay.
And then share the hell out of it on social media.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, I'll probably cut this part out, but is there anything you want to talk about specifically in terms of maybe promoting your own podcast, or something you would want to share?
What do you mean, like?
I mean, I don't know what else I would ask. I would probably ask. I'd like to know, like, how much time do you spend outside the podcast? What do you usually spend your time doing? That's a good question.
I probably spend a good, not counting the show, 6 to 8 hours a week on each show, and that's doing outreach, finding new guests, that's posting on social media, which takes a lot of time.
That's what I want to know. How much? What do you usually do in terms of reaching out? Do you prefer like a certain social media platform like Twitter or Facebook? And how do you usually go in outreach?
Outreach I do through connections of knowing the people, or I'll just send them an email, or I'll track down. I do a lot of research on all my guests to make sure they're legitimate. Obviously the ones that we've had on our show don't take a lot of research because they're well known. They do SMX and all that stuff, or they're with Google or something. But as far as social media goes, I try to go with communities. So kind of like in LinkedIn, I'll go after groups of SEO groups, and then Google Plus. I'll follow get in those communities there, and I'll post certain shows depending on the topic in those different communities.
Okay. And
Plus, I have a lot of followers too.
Usually, just post them and then put a little description of like what you did, and then you just share it like that, or do you include certain people? Are you in, like plus this person on Google, or are you like sending direct messages through LinkedIn?
No, I'm. What do you mean, to get them on the show, or to share the content?
To share the content, or even, so to share the content. Okay. To share the content.
I always tweet it to the person I'm having on the show, and they amplify it.
Okay, well, yeah, of course you want to do that, but I mean, like, I guess how much time do you spend sharing? Because what I'll do is I'll take like this podcast, for instance, after it's done being edited and all that sort of thing. I'll take it, I'll post it on my Podbean, and then I'll share it through, I don't know, like 8 different social media platforms, maybe less. And I'll just do like usually just a basic couple hashtags, little description, that kind of thing, and then that's pretty much it. Do you go beyond that?
No. No, I do exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that helps is being. I know you're on iTunes, but excuse me, I need some water. But
you can get water if you need it.
That's okay. Anyway, to iTunes, SoundCloud. I use Sprecher because Sprecher disseminates it through all that, YouTube, everything else.
Can you explain that? Because I actually haven't heard of Sprecher.
It's SPREAKER.
Okay.
.com. It's actually owned by iHeart, and you could submit your podcast to iHeart from there.
Okay. But
it disseminates to YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, everything all at once.
Wow.
So as soon as the show's over, it's everywhere,
Okay.
Which is kind of nice, and I get a lot of action on iTunes and SoundCloud. Sprecher I get a lot too, and then the mobile apps from iPhone and Android.
So would you suggest maybe moving from Podbean to Sprecher? And if so, do you know what the process of that would be?
Well, I've never heard of Podbean, so.
It's basically like it's just a little. It's almost like a little SoundCloud where you post your podcasts, and then it gives you an RSS feed that you can just put into your iTunes, and it'll feed to iTunes, but that's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't speak on that one. Like I said, I don't know, but here's a link to our Sprecher page.
Okay. I'm just wondering if I switch the podcast over, if it's gonna, it's probably gonna remove all my plays, and then I don't know if I'm gonna have to get like a new name on iTunes or something.
Well, you can take your RSS feed from there and put it in Sprecher, and it'll grab it.
Cool. Perfect.
And you can disseminate it from there if you want.
So you'd recommend to people who are probably using Podbean, or maybe they're hosting on their own site with an RSS, to actually move it into Sprecher because it's better at sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of? I think it's called like Restream. Hold on, I think I have the name of it. Restream. So it's basically, it's kind of like Sprecher, except it's all for video. So like when you're doing like a Blab or a Google Hangout, I think you already know, it restreams to all those different platforms at once.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I just discovered this the other day. Apparently it works pretty well. The only time you wouldn't really want to use it, I guess, is if you had really low bandwidth. So I was just thinking, like, maybe you could combine that with Sprecher and get like all your video broadcasting out there when you're doing the interview, and then also at the same time.
One thing we've done, and we're fixing to add it to the show, is we bought a 360-degree camera.
Oh, you told me about that.
Yeah, and I had to take the first one I bought back because it has to hook up to a network, and I don't need all that. I just need something that just sits on the table and has a flash card. But we're going to take that video and put it on YouTube. So the show will be, you can do a 360 view of the studio. Right. At the same time, it's kind of interactive.
That's cool. Yeah. So that's going to be a new addition to the podcast.
Yeah, and it'll have ads. I do video editing too, so I take and I'll put my sponsors inside the video. So when they pan around, they'll see whatever.
Do you want to talk about maybe some future hosts that are going to be on the show?
Yeah.
People who are interested in listening.
I just booked Olga from SM Rush, but I've got quite a few people. I've got, let me pull up the site and cheat here. I've got the two guys from Stone Temple Consulting. I got, hold on, I'm pulling up my calendar actually. Here, I have to do that. Some of them aren't posted on the site. Okay, so I've got Alan Blaze Wise next Tuesday. Then I've got Bill Schlotsky from SEO by the Sea.
Nice.
And I've got Michael Strecker, formerly of SEM Rush. Neil Patel, which is a content marketing.
That's going to be a big one.
Yeah. I got Eric Ing from Stone Temple. He does a lot of public speaking.
So if anybody has questions for these people and they know that they're going to be on your podcast, I think you have a phone number they can text, right?
Then call the show.
Okay. Can they do that at any time? It has to be at the certain time while you're doing it?
It has to be when we're live, which is on Tuesday at 3:30.
Tuesday at 3:30.
Yeah, and then the whole month of June is Moz month. Or May, I'm sorry.
So Tuesday at 3:30, where are you usually doing the podcast at, on Blab or?
We do it from, you can get it live from our website, or you can go to Sprecher, the link I just sent you.
Okay. And I think Sprecher actually has a chat room in it, doesn't it? Where you can go and ask questions. It sucks.
Yeah. And it's really hard to find the follow button too, which is something I want to bring up to them. But like, do you see the follow button anywhere when you go to that page?
Let's see.
You have to hunt for it.
I see the like button, download button, and then at the bottom right I see the follow button. But I haven't checked out yours. This is just some random.
Yeah.
See yours.
That's the only complaint I have about it, probably. But especially on mobile, it's really hard to find.
Yeah, I don't see it here. This is way more complicated. I see the play button. That's pretty much it, and the share buttons.
Right.
That's pretty ridiculous. Cool. Well, I mean, I definitely love your podcast, and I've gotten a lot out of it. So I really appreciate you, doing it, and I'm going to keep listening to it. And I think I've asked pretty much all the questions. I mean, I'm sure there'll probably be some in the future, but it's pretty cool also to see you on Blab, and be able to interact with you there. I would ask you your opinion on Blab, but I feel like it's pretty much everybody has the same universal opinion who's on Blab. It's just amazing, right?
I think it's awesome. I think it'll be better when it's more stable.
Yeah.
It's actually starting to get there, I think. But from a standpoint of doing the show, we try to give quality, and we can't have technical issues in the middle of a national show. We kind of suck, but So until they get to that point, I can't. I mean, I love the interaction because you can get questions right there. Everything is just it's very interactive, and I love it.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I mean, I think that's pretty much it. If you want to just share your, we already shared your Sprecher, but maybe you want to share your social media and whatnot, your website.
Yeah. My website is searchtalklive.com, and you can catch me on Twitter at searchtalklive or at Robert O'Haver. That's it.
Cool. All right, I'm going to end the broadcast now.